I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传习鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。
Okay, this question came up before. It's a recurring question. It's related to the question, what's the advanced practice of the Tao, or what is the advanced lesson of the Tao? Because people will go online and they see that, hey, there's a follow-up on the Tao Te Ching. It's called Hua Hu Jing. So wouldn't that be the advanced teaching of Lao? So I understand people are looking for the next level, but this is something that I talked about before. I don't really want to spend too much time on it today, especially because the only honest answer I can give is going to be a negative answer. So I will respond honestly and say I can't really recommend any Huahu Jing translations because they actually don't exist. Two books on the subject on the marketplace. First one is a modern-day fabrication made up out of whole cloth, like completely invented. It's not based on the ancient text at all. The ancient text dates back to the Tang Dynasty. The second one is a paraphrase of the first one. So they're essentially the same. The difference between Huahu Jing and the Tao Te Ching is that if you look at the many Tao Te Ching books that are available out there, you will see that some of them include the Chinese. Some of them will do it side by side. That's very good. That shows you that there's actual source material. Someone who knows Chinese can look at the English versus the original Chinese text and be able to tell if it's a good translation or not so great. With the Huahu Jing, there isn't any Chinese to go along with it because the Chinese that matches the English text does not exist. There is Chinese text from the Tang Dynasty. It was banned for many centuries. It was hidden away in a cave, and in the 1900s was rediscovered by archaeologists. Was hidden in a cave, but it was banned because it was a clumsy hoax. In the next slide, I will show you guys why it was a clumsy hoax, how people knew it was a clumsy hoax. It was a hoax for the purpose of saying that Taoism is superior to Buddhism. Buddhism is only a branch of Taoism. The first book did not use that original ancient text as the source, as something to translate from, because that ancient book reflected the racism and ignorance of the original author. So here I want to disabuse everyone of the notion, not speaking politically correct now. It is not true that you must be white to be racist. Not true at all. Okay, that ancient author of the Huahu Jing expressed thoughts that will I think amaze you, that will make people completely incredulous. And I have previously I did a line-by-line translation of the first part of it, and it included these pearls of wisdom, like Hindus and Caucasians, smell like fish or mutton, and that they enjoy brutal killing, etc. No one can look at that and possibly think that came from the wisdom of Lao Tzu. So that's why the modern-day fabrication was necessary, because the original text is completely unacceptable, and it was a hoax to begin with. Therefore, the modern-day edition is a hoax of a hoax. It's sort of a double hoax. So I can in good conscience recommend that. The Wikipedia entry on the Huahu Jing is the gentle version that leaves out a lot of details. It is possible to get a lot more details from the Chinese Wikipedia. Yes, Wikipedia exists for all the major languages of the world. There's a lot more historical details to be had in the Chinese edition. for anyone who doesn't want to take my word for any of this, I can point you to the Chinese version of the Wikipedia. This is going to be tough to type, and that's because it's actually Chinese text. It's actually Chinese text as it appears on screen. When it's represented as a English Earl, it has to be done like this to represent the Chinese text, unfortunately. So the best I can really offer is for you to copy and paste. But it gives the history of the Huahu Jing. First of all, realize that most contemporary Tao masters and teachers, Chinese students of the Tao, have never heard of the Huahu Jing, and that's because it's been banned for so many centuries. It wasn't banned because someone wanted to keep the higher level wisdom from being available to the world. It was banned because it was a clumsy hoax, and that it contained so much really awful material. The origin of the Huahu Jing is this right here. This is from about 1600, 1700 years ago. There was a Taoist, Wang Fu. So this is the closest we can come to the English. He was the leading figure of Taoism at the time. Now remember, 1700 years ago, that was already many hundreds of years after the time of Lao Tzu, the time of Tao Jing, which was 2,500 years ago. So like 800 years after that. By that time, Taoism, religious Taoism, had already devolved with a number of egregious errors. Alchemy was one such error, the attempt to turn base metal into gold or silver or something else valuable. The pursuit of immortality was another similar error. Yet another error was the deification of Lao Tzu, trying to turn Lao Tzu into a god, a deity. So all of these were in the background at the time. So Wang Fu debated against a Buddhist monk at the time, Bo Yuan. The Buddhist monk was a truly accomplished intellectual, was a lot smarter than Wang Fu. So when they engaged in debates, it didn't take a whole lot of effort for the Buddhist monk to always maneuver Wang Fu to a position where he has nothing more to say, that he would be routinely defeated by this monk, this Buddhist monk who was a lot smarter. So in an attempt to get one over his debate opponent, he took an existing work about the adventures of a master out in the west of China, turned that into Huahu Jing. Huahu meaning to transform the barbarians, the classic of transforming the barbarians. What it actually means is the classic of converting, proselytizing and converting savage barbarians into the superior ways of Taoism. And that's what the title actually means. So he took that to use as his evidence. Now it's all really just made up, but then he says, this book, this classic proves that Lao Tzu went to India where he inspired the beginning of Buddhism. So this Buddhism that you're debating with me, this is actually, yours is really a subset of my religion. That was the purpose. But the contents of the Huahu Jing was so horrible, and this was so transparent as a ruse that nobody took this seriously. Later on, in the Tang Dynasty, and here we're talking about like 1,300 years ago, so several hundred years have passed. In the Tang Dynasty, Buddhism became ever more popular, and Buddhist monks petitioned to the emperor to ban this book. Because what good is it? It's got so much bad information. It's got so much horrible information. You know, we should just order for all copies of this book to be burned, Your Majesty. So at the time in the Tang Dynasty, it was actually an empress, the empress, who was in power, who possessed absolute power. So this is an actual historical figure. a lot of people don't know, Westerners may not realize that there was this empress in ancient China who possessed so much power. Wu Zetian is the name of this empress. There are movies that are made about this empress. In the next slide, I'll show you pictures of the movie posters on this particular empress, modern depictions of this ancient empress. She started out as the concubine of the previous emperor because of her great beauty. She was inducted into the palace at the age of 14 because she was so beautiful. Later on, she was able to ascend ever more, and she bore the son for the emperor, the prince, who would become the next emperor. So when the previous emperor passed away, her son was still small, was still like 10 years old. So she took power as the empress, as the regent, temporarily taking power. But she then later on became the formal, actual emperor, declared herself the emperor, and everybody followed through. So modern times, if you want to say girl power, yeah, okay, well that's the example in ancient China of girl power. So the first petition was to her. She basically said, well, I don't know anything about this stuff, this religious stuff, so she assigned it to her ministers. They had debates, they had representation. Some were loyal to the Taoist cause, some were loyal to the Buddhists, and later on decided to not ban. But her son grew to manhood. Her son became the next emperor, and her son had his own ideas, and he's a really smart guy, so he looked at it and said, well, this is ridiculous. This is just absolutely awful. So I, as the new emperor, will ban this book. And that's the reason why modern Chinese have, most modern Chinese people have never heard of this book. So what I'm pointing here, so here I'm pointing to the Chinese, that is the name of the original Taoist that made this up. Here I'm pointing to the name of the Buddhist monk that he debated with, and below I am pointing to the part where the emperor decrees that this book shall be banned. And now, like I said, I'm going to show you the movie posters depicting the empress. This is the empress who delegated the task of the decision of banning the book to the ministers. So there are quite a few movies that are made on that. This particular movie, Fan Bingbing, you probably don't recognize her. She's the actress who plays Blink in the X-Men movie, the most recent X-Men movie. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, never mind. But it's the same actress. So, ancient empress, modern mutant, right? That's pretty good to have on your resume. And this is another actress playing the part. She's actually one character, a supporting character in this movie. This movie is translated as Detective D and the Phantom Flame. And that's a movie that's been, I believe it's been dubbed, it's been subtitled and released as Blu-ray in the US. Detective D, this is the name of that detective, sort of the ancient Chinese Sherlock Holmes. He served the empress, so she was a major character in that particular movie, different actress. So Wu Zetian, and this is the romanization for that, cinematic descriptions thereof. So I always like to include a little bit of the cultural colors because I think it brings some of these historical values to life. It may be very abstract when I talk about, oh, ancient China, emperors this, emperor that, but when you see something like this, it seems to make it a little bit more real. So, that question about the Huahu Jing got into a big discussion. I will summarize it for you here. The first book is based on oral tradition, not the text from the Tang Dynasty. And that's why it's the way it is. That's why it's not a true translation of that text. It's a translation of the oral tradition. And so what I'm saying is, nice try, but no cigar. There's basically no written version of the alleged oral tradition in Chinese. there's no reason to not want to write it down. If somebody writes it down, at least you can compare the Chinese with the English. It'll never be written down though, because the oral tradition is imaginary. But Derek, the book is written by a Chinese Taoist priest. Well, that doesn't really matter. Falsehood is still falsehood. But his lineage is well known. Oh no, that's debatable. Again, it doesn't have any bearing on truth versus falsehood. So what will be a good follow-up to the Tao Jing if not the Huahu Jing? I recommend the Qing Jing. So the Jing, G-I-N-G, is actually the same character as the C-H-I-N-G, and the same character as the C-H-I-N-G here in the Tao Te Ching. It just means classic. It's spelled differently because this is the old Wei Gao's romanization, and the Qing Jing, this is the pinyin romanization. In the pinyin romanization, CH is written as Q, and it's very confusing. So Qing Jing is the classic on tranquility and clarity. Jing is tranquility. Qing is clarity. Huahu Jing is the classic on Hua, to transform, convert, proselytize. Hu, barbarians, savages. So even the title, you can tell, is quite different in flavor between the two. So ordained Chinese Tao masters, like Master William here, Chinese students of the Tao, all know the Qing Jing, but do not know the Huahu Jing for good reason. The Qing Jing is of further interest because it's from the Tang Dynasty about 1,200 years ago, 1,300 years ago. It was a time, it's a halfway point between us and the time of Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu was 2,500 years ago. The Qing Jing was 1,250 years ago, midpoint. At that time, Buddhism had become very popular in ancient China. Now, there are people like the fabricator, like the hoaxers behind Huahu Jing, who felt that Buddhism was a threat, was an incursion, was a foreign menace, and therefore tried to resist and push back and attack it. But there were other Tao masters, like the anonymous author of the Qing Jing, who saw Buddhism and Taoism as two great traditions that have a lot to inform one another and learn from one another, and therefore authored the Qing Jing, which was a fusion of Taoist thoughts and Buddhist thoughts. So it's of interest to people who want to know what the fusion looks like. It's also a pretty good introduction into the basic tenets of Buddhism. The only tricky part is that it contains advanced lessons that are difficult to translate, and therefore there are no translations in the marketplace today. There are you can find plenty of information on the Qing Jing in websites, but not actual books. That is the reason why I decided to do the translation on that, and the manuscript for that has been completed and has just been submitted to the literary agents. So a book on that will be coming soon.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架规格是一鞠躬，接班一鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.
Participate in the Tao meeting by joining us online. For information, go to Taoism.net/Tao